All right, welcome, Dev. Thanks so much for agreeing to join us today. I know you've probably done 100 interviews, especially in the last couple of days, so I really appreciate it. I know you're actually out for dinner at a mate's house, and that's something we can't do in South Africa. So really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to chat to us. You've always been a humble guy. You've always been really, really down to earth, and I think the fact that you've agreed to come chat to us today says a lot about you as a person and your character. Guys, I thought to get started, what I would do, I see someone's trying to get in here. Before I get started, what I would do is play a little clip just to give everyone an idea of the type of year you've had, Dev. Can everyone see the clip that's up?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So I'm just going to play it. It's about a minute long. It'll just give you guys an idea of the type of season. Dev, if you just mute yourself so there isn't any feedback. Cool.
Continued his stellar form across all formats with a hugely influential T20 campaign, scoring 543 runs at an average of 67 and a strike rate of 145 with a top score of 101 off 51 balls against the Volts. In the final against the Aces at the Basin Reserve, he helped his side to 168 for 7 batting first, scoring 49 off 37 deliveries. Devon Conway's recognition in this category continues an eye-watering run of success for the Wellington Firebirds since his arrival in New Zealand from South Africa in 2017. His dominance of the 2019-20 domestic season saw him become the first player to top the run-scoring tables in all 3 formats in the same season. For the record, that included 701 Plunkett Shield runs, 87, including the highest score of 327 not out against Canterbury. 553 Ford Trophy runs at 55 and a strike rate of 99, and 543 runs at 67 and a strike rate of 145 in the Dream 11 Super Smash. Conway will become eligible to be selected in New Zealand A and Black Caps teams in August.
All right, Dev. Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. But there are lots of people who don't get to see the domestic scene in New Zealand, so I think it's cool to share that. You've had an incredible year. I think you're the first ever guy to top the run scores in all 3 competitions in New Zealand, T20, the 1 day and the 4 day. And what's probably most impressive is you've done that 2 years in a row. You haven't. A lot of people thought you'd be under pressure this year, and you came on this year, and you did even better. You've just, before we set this up, we didn't know, but you've just been awarded your Black Caps contract, which is fantastic. How does it feel? How are you feeling about everything?
Yeah, cheers. Thanks. Obviously, thank you for the clip. Pretty kind of you to put that up, and obviously the kind words that you've mentioned as well. It's been a interesting couple of days for me personally. I think it was quite a shock to hear the news from Gary Stead, the head coach, yesterday, sort of mentioning that I've got been rewarded the offer for a contract. So, yeah, I think it's I can't really pinpoint how I feel right now. It's been it probably hasn't hit me yet, but it's a good feeling. It is a good feeling, but I think it'll take time for that to sort of sink in. So it's been good.
Okay, we'll chat a little bit more about the Black Cap stuff a little bit later, but I thought, since we're dealing with a lot of young school guys here, we go back to the beginning. As a young cricketer, Dev, where did it start? I'm gonna, while you're answering that question, I'm just gonna put a picture up that your sister's given me. So I mean that's awesome. But where did it all start for young Devon? Here you are. I don't know if you guys can see that. That's young Devon, I think, at Kempton Cricket Club with an awful technique. Dev, where did it all start for you?
Oh, it looks like it started all there, Brendan. But no, thanks, Sinead, for stitching me up with that photograph. Appreciate it. But it started, I think, when I was about, I reckon about 5 or 6 years old, sort of playing backyard cricket, with my sisters growing up, and obviously a couple of my best mates. I was pretty fortunate that we sort of stayed on a plot of land, so there was a lot of space for us to sort of kick a ball around in the backyard and obviously play cricket as well. So Yeah, probably 5, 6 years old it started for me, and then obviously I think my dad sort of pushed me into club cricket, sort of in age group cricket. I think probably about under 8s maybe, and then sort of moved through the age group areas from then onwards.
And Dev, I mean, from the very beginning, did you hit the ball hard and far, or was it a sort of gradual process to where you are now?
Oh, it's always going to be a gradual process. You're never going to just pick up something. I think it's like everything in life. You're not just going to all of a sudden be a world-class player or world-class person. You've got to you obviously got to work hard at it, and it was just the passion that I had from a young age that I wanted to be outdoors. I wanted to practice. I wanted to play. And I think obviously through that time spent whilst practicing, that allowed me to improve in my game. So it was definitely a work in progress from a long time.
Devon, you don't have any brothers, but you made up for it with a couple of sisters who weren't scared to bowl at you in the garden.
Yeah, lucky. I was quite lucky that they were also older than me. So, at a young age, they had really good ball sense. They had good ball skills, so they were able to catch and field and bowl. Probably bowl sometimes a little bit too fast for me when I was very young, but luckily I started to improve and I could sort of hold my end in the backyard when it used to get very competitive. I remember quite distinctly Shanae not wanting me to bowl spin to her because she didn't like the ball turning. So I had to keep bowling it straight so she could hit it. So it did get competitive, but I was lucky to have them, to help me, play and just be active in the backyard.
Dev, you're obviously a very proud St. John's old boy, and we really appreciate you coming across here and chatting to some of the Jeppe boys and staff and old boys and parents. St. John's is obviously a great move for you. It was a happy time for you. You started there in grade 8. You came across from Keps in primary school towards the end of your primary school career. And I think it was at that stage that you really understood that you were quite good at this game. Talking back to St. John's, can you think of any schoolmasters who had an impact on you, Dev?
Yeah, obviously I think definitely would have to mention guys like A.D. Norris. He was head of sport at school. Sean Wilson, I think he might be listening on this, I'm not sure, but he's obviously an old boy, Jeppe old boy. So yeah, Mr. Wilson had a massive impact on me. Lewis Montato, who came sort of like during
Mr.
my
Wilson was your housemaster here, Dave? Mr. Wilson was your housemaster? Yes,
he was the housemaster. He used to look after me. He actually he gave me Ben, his son, to look after he was about probably a week or 2 years old, 2 weeks old, and yeah, I had to look after him in the boarding house. So yeah, we've fond memories.
And Dev, I mean, I had the unfortunate, and a lot of people don't realize this, when I started my career in teaching, I somehow got involved in the Jeppe first side, and it was at the exact same time that you were in grade 11 and 12. And I think of the 3 or 4 occasions we met, you scored 100 each time. How many hundreds did you score at St. John's? Because there's a whole lot of rumors going around what the number is, and I'm not even sure if you remember.
To be honest, I've got absolutely no idea. I would be lying if I said any number. I actually don't know, Brendan. It's never enough. You always want to get more hundreds as a cricketer. You always want to be greedy. But I think my mom might have those stats. So if she's involved here, if she can write a message, then she might be able to give us an accurate number, because I know she used to keep track of all those sort of things.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of numbers. It's a lot. Sandy, if you are on here, don't be scared to write in the comments there. Yeah, Dev, Mr. Beshe, the director of cricket at Jeppe, you know him. Of course. He's a famous South African schoolmaster. He made a comment, and he's told the story probably 100 times to whoever will listen. That when St. John's played Maritzburg College, you scored 100 that day, and he had a chat with Mr. Norris and basically said, look, I think this kid's going to go all the way. He showed great concentration and class. And his question is basically, did you think then that you'd get to a place of playing international cricket? Did you think as a young man that you had what it took to play international cricket?
Yeah, I think it's obviously very kind of Mr. Boucher. Obviously, I remember playing against his team at school, and very competitive man. So yeah, I think it's always been a goal for me to play international cricket. I've always had that dream from a very young age. So I've always personally strived to play international, and it's hard to say. Sometimes you can face setbacks, and you know you might not be able to achieve those dreams. But it's something that I've always believed I can do. But it's one of those. You've got to just stay present and take each day as it comes, because you're not going to get that. You're not going to achieve that goal straight away. It's always going to be a long-term thing. So yeah, it's something, as I say, I've been keen to do my whole life, and it's definitely a goal that I'm still striving to achieve.
Yeah. While we're talking about St. John's, I see there's a question from a young man. He's asking which house you were in at St. John's. Yep.
I was in Nash House. I was in the boarding house from standard 6.
Yeah, well, there we go. Dev, you played representative cricket. I can remember at the under 15. In those days, it was called the Fedshire Week. You got bowler of the week, you got batsman of the week, you got all rounder of the week, you got everything of the week. You played Gauteng under 15. You played Gauteng under 17 and under 19 in those days. I've actually got a picture here somewhere of your team.
Is this another stitcher?
Yeah, unfortunately.
All right, here we go.
There we go. I think what's probably most interesting about this pic, Dev, is the guy in the front row on the bottom left. Is that Elton Yankees?
Yeah, Elton.
There we go.
Wasn't a small boy, was he?
No, he wasn't. And there you are in the front. Is that the same pic that they've used as your ESPN cricket info profile, Dev?
It could very well be. I think there's a lot of similarities in that photo. I've had a lot of abuse about that cricket info profile picture. I think they need to change it. Definitely need to change it.
So we've obviously got lots of Jeppe boys and boys from other schools online who've played Gauteng cricket, and I think it's pretty cool to see that someone of your stature had to go through the ranks. There's Temba Bavuma as well, isn't it, Dev?
Yeah, there's Temba. Some good players. There's some really good players. Dom Hendricks.
Sorry, man.
Very strong team. Very strong team there was.
Dev, yeah, let's move on. A question I want to ask, it might be a bit of a personal one. I do apologize, but I think it's pertinent. In my job, in Mr. Beshe's type of job, we often get, boys in the office, parents in the office who are a bit disappointed. Maybe their son is not playing in the first side. Maybe their son is not bowling high up in the A team, and maybe he's not batting where he wants to bat. Maybe he didn't make the provincial team. You faced a lot of disappointments in your career, and I think the one thing that probably we will respect you most for is your perseverance, and getting this black cap contract now is just a reward for just years of perseverance, and you never ever gave up. We do have a lot of disappointment in cricket. A lot of our boys get disappointed. I think for you didn't make the SA schools team when a lot of people thought maybe you should have, and you tried your best in South African domestic cricket for a long time. You found great success, but you had lots of disappointments along the way. Do you have any advice for the parents and the boys around facing disappointments in cricket?
Yeah, I think for me it's been, as you said, I have faced quite a lot of disappointments, but I've always used that as a sort of like a tool for me to actually motivate me to push harder. I remember distinctly when I never got selected for the SA Under-19 team to go to New Zealand, actually, for the Under-19 World Cup. That was a bitter pill to swallow for me. I actually used that as a real motivator to really look to get better. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, you can't control selection sometimes. You can't control where you're going to bat sometimes. So you've just got to control things you can. And for me, those things would be things like training, working hard, always looking to improve, having that growth mindset. It's key for me, because if you're going to let those setbacks get to you, that's when you fail more and you put more pressure on yourself. And that's you can't afford to have that sort of mindset in cricket.
Sorry, my mic was on. Dave, every cricketer goes through bad form. It's there's not a single cricketer in the world who doesn't experience bad form at times. I think it's been a long time since you've had to deal with that. But what does Devon Conway do when it's just not working?
I was very lucky in 2010 when I made the move from Johannesburg to Durban. I played alongside Hashim Amla for a year, and I sort of tried to pick his brain because he was obviously one of the best players in the world at that time. And his advice was, his words to me were, make peace with failure. And I'll always remember that, because in cricket, you are going to fail more than you succeed. I mean, if you look at statistics, a guy like Don Bradman, who averaged 99 point whatever, he only would have scored 100 every 3 times he batted. So you actually are failing more than you succeed. So if you've got that in your mind, and you understand that that's part of the game, it's natural, it makes it a little bit more realistic, and you can actually appreciate the times when you do well and you have a good day. You can actually appreciate those moments more.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant advice, and I hope the young guys are listening. I think I read something about AB de Villiers, Dev, that he only really got over 40 every 4 or 5 times he batted. So you think these guys are super successful, but even they struggle at times. Cricket is a difficult game, and coming to terms with failure, I think, is a big one, and I hope the guys are listening up to that. Dev, we have a few parents online. Sorry,
Yeah.
do you want to add something to that?
No, that's pretty clear. No, 100%.
We have a few parents online. A lot of them are watching with their sons. Do you have any advice for parents? I think, I'm not just saying this for brownie points, but your folks have played a huge role in your life. From a cricket perspective, they've supported you all the way from that picture when you were a little guy at Kempton Cricket, all the way through to I think staying up all night watching you bat online. They really are supportive of you. Do you have any advice for parents? Sometimes parents are not always sure how to support their children without getting in the way. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think I'm very, very lucky to have the parents that I do. They were very supportive. My dad definitely pushed me, but there were times where he knew when to push and when not to push. And that was the key, because I have seen in the past parents are a little bit too hard on their sons, and they're a little bit too hands-on, and they get very, very invested. It's almost as if they're trying to play the career or the game for their child, and that puts a lot of pressure on each player. It's important that it comes from a good place, and not a place where there's pressure added, because there is pressure in cricket alone, and you don't need more of that. I think I was lucky in that my parents, they handed me off to my batting coach at a young age, Jimmy Cook. So he could like coach me and train me, and that allowed me to sort of have that relationship with someone other than my dad, who was always trying to say, okay, Dev, you need to move your feet more, or Dev, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So I was lucky in that way, so I could trust on Jimmy. But then again, I think the advice for the parents is to always show support. That's going to be a natural thing, but try not get too invested in what your son is doing. Just be there to support, be there to encourage, and yeah, that's pretty much all you can do. You can't really get too hands-on, because that's when it gets a bit more mixed up.
So I'll paint the scene for you. You're playing on what is it? Is it the Mitchell Oval at St. John's? Is that the main oval? I forget the name.
Yep, that's correct.
You're playing on the Mitchell Oval, and you go out to bat and you play a terrible shot, or you get run out. I know that irritates your dad a bit if you get run out, and you get a duck. What is your dad's reaction to that? How would that have gone?
I'll never forget. There was a game we played against Randburg. My dad will remember this quite distinctly. I somehow happened to score 100 that day, and obviously really, really happy. But there was 2 balls left in that innings, and I tried to run a 2, and I got run out with 2 balls left in the game. And my dad came down on me like a house on bricks. So why don't you get the not out? And I didn't. I remember how frustrated, and I'll never forget that, because I was actually so delighted that I managed to score 100. And I think that was my first team 100 that year, or ever actually. And he still came up to me and he said, why didn't you get the night out? And I'll never forget that. But I think that came from a good place, you know, because it was a good learning curve for me. Yes, I was shocked that he said it, but it was something that I'll always remember, and it was a good learning curve for me to like use that experience in the future.
Awesome. Kian Robertson had an earlier question. Kian, Dev is our first team vice captain.
Okay.
He's an excellent left arm spin bowler. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's just been drafted into the Lions Academy. So well done, Kian, if you can hear it.
Great.
So Kian had a question, and similar to a question that I'd already had for you before. You know, you obviously said you'd played. A lot of people don't realize you had quite a long career in South Africa before going across to New Zealand. You gave it a good go here for 5 years or 6 years or whatever it was. You played for the Dolphins. You played for the Lions. You spent some time in England. So you've been all over the place. What would you say is some differences between the New Zealand cricket culture and the South African cricket culture? It's a difficult question, I understand. But do you have any insight for us on that?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar in terms of the competitiveness. Players are coming hard. The culture is very strong. It's quite similar in the fact that there's only 6 professional teams here in New Zealand, as well as 6 professional teams in South Africa. So in that sense, it's quite similar. But in terms of the culture, what I've noticed in New Zealand is there's a real sense of like homey feeling in the team. You know, there's a lot of backing amongst your own teammates. There's a sense of like really wanting you to do well from others. You know, there's a good support system in place, obviously at the Wellington Firebirds where I'm playing. You know, the coaching staff, the management, they all. It's really like down to earth. It's a warm feeling. That's in terms of a culture, but in terms of playing, it's very competitive, as that will happen anywhere in any cricket. So those are probably the slight differences. Where I felt a little bit in South Africa, it was a bit of a dog eat dog world. You know, it was sometimes you're fighting your battle alone. Whereas in New Zealand, it just seems like it's a bit more homey, and you know, you've got that sense of support from your teammates, most importantly.
A lot of the young cricketers are asking questions in the chat, and I'm not going to answer all of them. A lot of them are asking questions like, should I leave? Shouldn't I leave? And you know, I think it's quite irresponsible for anyone to advise guys blanket level if they should leave or not. And everyone's got a different story. What do you say about that?
Yeah, like for me, it wasn't just a cricketing decision for me. It did play a major role, but it was also about, you know, seeing what opportunities in the future lie ahead for me in New Zealand. You know, what sort of country would I like to raise a family one day in? You know, I'd been to England a few years, and I enjoyed the lifestyle of, you know, the safeness of walking on the streets and, you know, catching the local transport and stuff. That for me, that way of life was important. And that's one of the reasons why we try to look abroad, to try and see what the sort of differences may be and if it would be a better thing for us in the future. And luckily, cricket has played a major role in that for me and my partner, Kim. Yeah,
Dev, we'll talk a little bit more about New Zealand now. You went across there, and you know, obviously, I listen to a lot of interviews. Shanae listens to a lot of interviews, so we'll end up hearing a lot of what people say about you. And the general feeling coming across there is that this young South African, he knows how to work hard. Have you always had a work ethic, or is it kind of come in your later years? Because you are getting a name for yourself in New Zealand as the type of guy who really, really works hard.
Yeah, I think that's part of my DNA, you know, like always wanting to hit balls, always wanting to. I remember when I was in the boarding house, I used to go with one of my best mates. We used to wake up, I think probably about 5:30 in the morning, and then start hitting balls, you know, from 6 to like 6:45 before breakfast. So, and then, you know, would go through school, somehow scrape through the day, and then go back to cricket training in the late afternoon. So, I've always had it, you know. I've always wanted to like train hard. It's something I've noticed a little bit about New Zealanders. They're a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more chilled. So they tend to only like start training sort of 1st of September, So they literally go away from the game throughout the whole winter and then start their preseason training a month before the season starts. Whereas I've come from a culture where it's, work 12 months of the year, no breaks. And that's allowed me to sort of, it's actually starting to create a new culture that we've noticed. A few of us in our team, we're sort of like adopting this mentality of working throughout the winter to improve, utilize that time to get better. And it's starting to infiltrate a little bit more across the setup in Wellington at the moment.
Yeah, there's quite an interesting question here from Matthew Dupree. So how did you manage school and sports? And I think he's talking academically. Dev, you didn't exactly win too many academic awards at St. John's, did you?
Yeah, no, tough question. I passed. I never failed, so I managed to get through. There was pressure moments when I think the deputy headmaster came up to me and said, "Listen, okay, we need to now start knuckling down on your work here because, St. John's hold a very high a pass rate, and I couldn't let the guys down by being that one guy that's going to fail their matric exams." But it's important, to find a balance, because in having that balance between cricket and doing your work, it allows your mind to take your mind off cricket. And that's the nice thing about like focusing on your work, is that you can actually focus your mind on other things, which is important.
Dev, we've got a couple of fun questions here for you. Your cricket role model growing up, just very quickly.
Neil McKenzie.
The scariest or the fastest bowler you've ever faced?
Probably two guys, Mashant Delanga, and then there's a guy in our setup now, Ben Sears, probably the quickest bowler in New Zealand, potentially one of the quickest in the world, actually.
Tell me, Dev, you can be honest, facing one of those guys or the run we went through Kensington, which was more scary for you?
I enjoyed the run we did in Kensington because at least we could catch the Uber on the way back, so we didn't have to run up that hill. I'll take the run. I'll take the run. Sometimes it can get your heart rate a little bit pumping more than you think when you're facing those quicker guys.
Favorite cricket ground you ever played on? You've played on a few.
I've played at the Oval in the UK. That was a good experience. But in terms of the grounds, I'd probably say Newlands in Cape Town. It's just a beautiful ground. It's beautiful scenery.
Standard on that. And your best batting partner, maybe an unfair question.
Best batting partner. At the moment, Dom Hendricks comes to mind because he mentioned me as being one of his favorite batting partners. So I think it would be right for me to sort of return the favor on that. Both left-handed batters, so we complemented each other well. Neil McKenzie, interesting guy to bat with because he's a little bit too superstitious for my liking. There's too many things you got to tick off whilst batting, let alone just like watching the ball. But at the moment, probably a young guy by the name of Rachin Ravindra. I really enjoy batting with him. He's another Wellingtonian. Yeah, he'll play Black Caps one day. He's real good. He's only 20 years old and he's serious. And
the last one, your favorite cricket shot?
I'd like to say probably the cover drive.
That cover drive that people are throwing around the web of you double stepping and hitting over covers for six. That's quite a shot. How many times have you played that shot, Dev? Because geez.
Not many. Sometimes you just got to roll the eyes back and just swing for the hills, and luckily that came off for me. So, not many times.
Right, Dev, we're gonna wrap up soon. There's a couple of questions. I know that you are at dinner, so we don't want to keep you too long, and I know the guys are eager to chat to you. But just when you arrived in New Zealand, Dev, was it difficult to earn earn the respect of everyone around you? There was a couple of questions. I think people think you arrived there and everything was on a platter for you. You had to work. You started at a club. How was it trying to earn the respect of everyone around you?
Yeah, it was tough, Brendan. I can remember my first game in New Zealand was actually, it was an internal club game and it was on an AstroTurf. And I hadn't played on an AstroTurf since I was probably 13 years old. So it was a bit of a challenge. It was different for me. But I definitely had to work hard. I was doing a lot of coaching in schools and stuff like that. And I somehow got an opportunity to play in an internal Firebirds game. I batted 10. The coach put me at 10, and he literally just wanted me to do some wicket keeping during that game. So it did take time. I did get a lot of lucky breaks, but yeah, it's been one of those where I'm still trying to gain the respect from a number of players in New Zealand around the country.
Dev, you've obviously just, as you mentioned, you've received your Black Caps contract. Tell us what that means for the guys who don't quite understand. You've obviously, we've heard all sorts of stories about you becoming eligible for August. It doesn't mean that you necessarily get selected for them. I know that the T20 World Cup was supposed to be in August, and that was an aim of yours. Obviously, with coronavirus, we don't know what's going to happen there. But what does the contract actually mean? Does it mean that you're now part of the squad? How does it work?
Yeah, so I'm part of the 20 contracted players, Black Cap contracted players throughout the country. So I'm sort of like part of the squad. We're going to go into some camps now in the winter, I believe. And it just sort of, again, makes me eligible for selection from August onwards for up-and-coming tours if they were to happen due to coronavirus. Who knows?
All right. Sorry, there's something wrong with my screen. Dev, I thought sorry, my screen is playing havoc here.
It's no worries.
I'm going to just go through one or two of the questions now, and then we'll probably end it off. I know that, like I said, you're at dinner and you've probably got to get back there. I'm going to go through. Connor Martin has asked this question about 100 times. He wants to know what's your favorite moment in the LPL League. I think that's the Lenasia Premier League that you played in a few years ago, Dev. That was a bit of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. My favorite moment, it was probably the year when Soviet Sporting Supermen, the team I was involved with, we won the trophy that one year. Can't remember the details too much in that game, but winning that, that trophy was quite special for me.
A lot of guys are asked, were you always in the A teams? And I think it's fair to say you were. At St. John's, you played under 14. And then I remember I was the under 15 coach at Jeppe, and you kind of skipped under 15. You went to first side. I think Mr. Norris backed you a lot. So you played in the first side as a very young guy.
Yeah, that's right. I was fortunate to play in a lot of A teams. So I only got that challenge of the setbacks of being dropped and stuff at a higher level. So I was pretty lucky. So I understand that doesn't happen for most cricketers, but I was lucky. I was one of the lucky guys. I can admit to that.
All right, Dev. We're gonna close it off there. I don't think there's too many other questions. A lot of guys are asking about your move to New Zealand and why you did. I think you answered that question. You took a chance and you worked bloody hard, and now you're enjoying the rewards of that. And I really appreciate. I know Mr. Beshe, the director of cricket at Jeppe, appreciates that he's got most of his first team online here, and most of our cricketers are here. And I think it's, like I said earlier, you're a humble guy. You've done hundreds of interviews the last few days, and here you are taking out time in your busy schedule to chat to some guys up in Kensington. Thanks, Deb. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem at all, Brendan. I obviously appreciate you guys getting me on and involved, and it's thanks to Mr. Bechet as well for everything he's doing at Jeppe as well as you. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys.
Give the last parting words. I know it's difficult. What advice do you have for the young guys? They're all kind of asking questions. Do you have any advice for them as young cricketers who have dreams?
Yeah, I think it's got to come within. You've got to try and chase your dream. When you practice, be smart when you practice. It's not only just about hitting balls or bowling balls for the sake of doing it. It's actually being smart and trying to isolate exactly what you want to work on, what you're striving for. Don't let setbacks get you down. Use it as a motivator. Always look to improve. Have that growth mindset. That's key, especially in cricket, because I'm also still working on a few things. There's a lot of things that I need to nail down before, if I ever manage to get an opportunity to play at that international level. And yeah, just enjoy your moments, enjoy your memories with your teammates. There's a lot of times you sort of reflect on teams, like seeing that photograph of the under-19 team. It's awesome just to reflect on those memories. So cherish playing alongside each other, because you will you will go your own separate ways at times. So just appreciate the ride.
I'm going to end the recording there. I think Mr. Jeppe might have a question.
Yeah, Dev, I think what really makes me admire you to the hilt is, obviously I've seen your journey from Standard 7, having played against you down at the January festival in Pietermaritzburg, is that you've displayed some serious patience in South Africa. I mean, I followed you closely at the Lions stroke Strikers and the Dolphins stroke Inland, and I really shared in your frustration because I could see you putting performances together week in and week out, and then getting axed, and then back in and then back out, etc., etc. And I think the key thing is your humility and the degree of patience you've shown, and you've obviously controlled the controllables. And whatever the outcome is after the process and the journey you've taken, what will be will be. And I think that's a great lesson for young cricketers. We had a chat last night with Russell Domingo on a similar platform. And the common thread is how many guys of sort of 19 to 24 don't get a contract and they just give up. And I think the lesson that you can display to everyone here is that you've hung in, you've worked hard, you've controlled what you can control. And I'll tell you what, I'll be the first to toast you when you put on that black cap. I'm so excited that you've got a contract. And I've no doubt in my mind that you're going to be a top international cricketer. So well done for that. And keep working hard. And I hope the kids on the group here have listened to your journey, because I think it's a wonderful story. So well done. Thank you. And best going forward, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Boucher. Very kind of you. Thank you.